What's up everybody, this is Dave here with Comics Games Life, and today's video is on the Absolute Zero story arc, and it's found in Absolute Batman issues number 7 and 8. And in this story, we're going to be introduced to the Absolute Universe's Mr. Freeze. Now with the Absolute Universe being darker and more depressing than the Prime Universe, now we're guaranteed to get some original content along with some unexpected and twisted nods to these characters' traditional origin stories. Like for example, the name of the story is called Absolute Zero. Now that could be a characterization of the dark and cold nature theme throughout this story, but what it also represents is when Mr. Freeze made his first appearance back in 1959, he wasn't known as Mr. Freeze. His original name was Mr. Zero, so it seems like the Absolute Universe is going to be labeling him with his original name minus the Mr. and keeping it just Zero. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the story. Now we pick up very shortly where we left off back in issue number 6. After Batman got into some high seas shenanigans with Black Mask, and he narrowly escaped death by ocean by the elite, highly trained, and very British Alfred Pennyworth. And even though he's still mending from his wounds, Bruce meets up with the Crime Alley crew, which consists of his longtime friends Eddie, Ozzy, Waylon, Harvey, and Selina. But we haven't seen Selina Kyle in present-day Gotham City. We have seen her in flashbacks when they were younger, but the rest of them have congregated in Crime Alley to pay their respects and say farewell to another member of their crew that we haven't seen in previous issues, who goes by the name Mitchell Malone, aka Matches Malone. Now in the Prime Universe, we all know that Matches Malone was an arsonist, thief, and con man who had passed away, but Bruce Wayne used his identity and disguised himself as Matches Malone so he can navigate undeterred in Gotham's criminal element to gather intel on the nefarious things that Gotham's underbelly has brewing. And some of that lore has bled into this universe in this new manifestation of Matches Malone. Now, while the Crime Alley crew are paying their respects and remembering how Matches was, he was the kind of kid that would do pretty much anything. He would take on any dare and really live life on the edge. But then something happened, and after that life-changing event, he started flying a little too close to the sun because he found his way into the criminal lifestyle, which had him going in and out of prison. Now there were times when he was doing well, but for the most part, it seemed like he was determined to head down a path of self-destruction. And while they're stoking up fires of the past, they start to ask each other who was the last time we even saw him. And that's when Bruce appears out of the woodwork. Still somewhat beat up from the battle with Black Mask on his yacht, he begins to tell the crew exactly what happened with his last conversation with Matches. But as we move further along, we're going to be jumping back and forth through the conversations that are happening at this memorial in Crime Alley with the events that are going to be taking place afterwards. But now we are 1 week prior to Matches' demise. And because of the craziness that happened during issues number 1 through 6, Gotham City is currently under martial law. The police have been decked out with brand new gear, which makes them more like a military unit rather than a police force. And this includes some flying vehicles that are constantly surveilling the citizens of Gotham City. And right now, Bruce is decked out in some plain clothes and making his way to the Elliott Bridge where he's gonna meet up with Matches. And he hasn't seen him in a while, but Bruce did speak to him prior to this encounter, and he actually asked him for a favor. He was asking Matches to use his connections to get some fake IDs so that Bruce can enter the black site that's currently being built called Ark M, which yes is a nod to Arkham Asylum, but in this series, a mysterious company called JK are building these facilities called Arks all throughout the entire world. And they don't have names, they're all associated with letters, like Ark A, Ark B, Ark C, and the one being built in Gotham is Ark M. So I thought that was a really cool nod to Arkham Asylum. But when they finally meet each other, Matches is thrilled to see Bruce. And he's telling Bruce, I have exactly what you need, but I actually did you one better, because he got himself some fake IDs, which got him into the building crew that's currently working on Ark M, and he spent the last week inside that place. Now Bruce is freaking out. Bruce knows that there are some nefarious things that are happening in that place, and he didn't want his friend to actually go in there. He just wanted him to clear the path so that he can infiltrate inside and get a look at what's going on. And Matches is telling Bruce, hey, I've been in my fair share of lockups, but this one is next level. As a matter of fact, it's not even in the process of being built. It's already up and running. Bruce is telling him he shouldn't have gone in there. But Matches is like, Bruce, I miss you and the guys. I did this all on my own because I wanted to see what was going on in there. And to be honest, I owe you. And as Bruce turns and asks him what for, he starts to sweat and stutter. And while speaking some garbled gibberish, pockets of his flesh begin to open up as blood oozes out of it. And as Bruce is freaking out, Matches falls dead to the ground in a heaping pile of mush. And before he can get spotted, Bruce grabs Matches' cell phone and takes off. Now as Bruce is telling this to the guys back in Crime Alley, they're blown away because the police report didn't mention anything like this. And Bruce goes on to tell him that he was killed by some sort of mysterious biological attack. And as much as the guys are surprised by what they're hearing, their anger surpasses their shock, because all of them have recently found out that Bruce is the Batman. And they're upset, justifiably so, because sure, Bruce has kept this away from them for a long time, but now that they know, he's still keeping things from them. Like the last they saw or heard of Bruce was when he jumps out of Ozzy's plane onto the yacht in the middle of the ocean to take on Black Mask, and for all they knew, he didn't come back from that fight. And as Bruce is making his argument, he follows up with saying he should have kept all of them apart from his Batman persona. And that's when the guys lay it to him straight. Now I feel that this is the straightforward and abrupt attitude that only a true friend would give, because they start asking Bruce some questions. Like Harvey is asking Bruce, so when you clerked with me, was that just so you can learn more about the law? To help you with being Batman? And trained in martial arts with Waylon? And studied with Eddie? And committing crimes with Ozzy to learn more about the dark side of Gotham? Because if that's the case, we have all been a part of Batman for a long time. And Harvey follows up by saying, you know what? The only way to deal with this is if we all put our cards on the table. But Bruce, being as brooding as ever, draws a line in the sand and tells all of them to get out of his way so he can get back to work. Now, in my opinion, this whole attitude with vigilante characters thinking that they're the only ones that can do the work that they do, and that to involve anyone else is to bring them into harm's way and possibly meet certain death, is getting pretty old. Now, I know it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, but I'm hoping that Bruce drops the attitude sometime in the near future. But as the story pulls us along, we are now going to be shown the events that have taken place after this meeting in Crime Alley, where Bruce had taken some time to investigate Match's cell phone, and he found some pretty disturbing footage that he took while inside of Ark M, like hallways of cell doors with people screaming and moaning behind them, as well as a list with the names of Langstrom, Isley, Strange, and Fries. Names he found out are researchers and doctors who are working in this place. Now, the only one with any connection to Gotham is Dr. Victor Fries, who's created a company called VCore. And they actually have offices in Gotham. So after curfew, dressed as Batman, Bruce makes his way across the skyline with the hopes that he would go undetected. The reason why Bruce thought he can get away with this is because there's been this freak snowstorm that's going on in Gotham. Now, it's not even the winter time. It's in April. So a snowstorm at this point in time is highly unusual. But anyway, long gone is the snow covering that Batman thought he was going to have to avoid the gaze of the guards and the skyships. So they spot him right away, and they start sending out some drones. And Batman is navigating his way through the night sky, dodging bullets and firing batarangs back at these drones, all the while on a conference call with Alfred. Now, Alfred is poking his nose around the World Health Organization, trying to figure out what exactly this biological weapon that killed Matches Malone really is. And all he was able to figure out is that it's some sort of bacteria, one that the World Health Organization has no record of. And so Bruce, in the middle of flying and fighting, is asking Alfred where he thinks it came from. And Alfred has no clue, even though he's tied in to all sorts of top secret, confidential, for your eyes only kind of information. But he tells him, you know what? I'll be back in a few days, so just sit tight, mend your wounds, and don't do anything stupid till I get back. So as Bruce finishes beating up a couple of cops, making his getaway, hanging up with Alfred, he finds himself at the VCore building, where he ditches his Cape Crusader costume and dons his civil service work clothes. Armed with only a briefcase, he walks into the VCore offices, where he's mesmerized by a wall of frozen ice that contains several extinct animals, like a mammoth, a tiger, and a scarab. But he's soon interrupted by one of the employees there. So Bruce quickly jumps into his alibi as to why he's there in the first place, because he says he's there for city business as a civil engineer who's there to run a power check on the facility, because it is pulling in a lot of juice. But the employee barely looks at his ID, which Bruce has changed his name from Wayne to Pennyworth, which is kind of a douchebag move because he's low-key putting a spotlight on Alfred, whose anonymity is practically a bulletproof vest for him since he's neck deep in the world of spies and secrecy. But I digress. So as the conversation moves on, we find out that this employee is Victor Jr., the son of Victor and Nora Fries, the married couple that created this company. And Bruce asks him if Victor and Nora are still overseeing VCore. And then Victor fires off a somewhat cryptic answer, and then pushes a button which opens up a panel on one of the walls and shows him his parents, who are emaciated with disturbing looks on their faces, frozen in this block of ice. And as Bruce is in shock by what he's seeing, Victor goes on to tell him what they do there. So his parents were firm believers that ice held wonders and could be used to preserve good things. And so they created this company that they use these freezing techniques to freeze people with terminal illnesses. So for years or possibly even decades later, when a cure has been found for their illness, they can be thawed out and given given proper treatment. So that's why there's so much power going to this building, because this is where they house all of those people. And Victor's parents are a part of that mix too. So technically they're not dead, they're just in stasis. And so Bruce asks, has anyone ever been successfully revived? And that's when we learn a little bit of history about Victor Jr. So when he was a kid, he would go out on expeditions with his parents. And one day he was diagnosed with a rare terminal disorder. So his parents did what they thought was best and put him under ice. And as he's telling the story, he's focusing on the bodies of his parents and not paying much attention to Bruce. And he says that his parents told him that it wasn't going to hurt and that when he woke up, the world would be a better place. So as Bruce is taking this opportunity to snoop around, what he's not seeing is the transformation that Victor is going through right now. His hand is turning into the color of frostbite black, and the blood in his veins are becoming as blue as ice. And he starts to talk about what the ice was really like. And as his eyes become blood red, he confesses that he felt everything, every moment in that world of cold. He says the pain was excruciating as the ice grinds and twisted its way into his body. And he tells Bruce that the ice creates monsters. And that's when Bruce comes to the realization that this psychopath put his own parents in there to feel what he felt during this process. And as Bruce turns to address him, all he sees is this slim, elongated, bulging, red-eyed ice demon. And before he can do anything, Victor grabs him and gives him some sort of ice touch, which renders him unconscious. Then Victor drags him to one of these ice capsules that they use to freeze these people and strips him down, leaving him in only his underwear and the cast that he has around his arm. And here, during Victor's monologue, we hear about his experience while being frozen, and it sounds horrible because due to the hypothermia, you'll feel extreme heat and extreme cold. And the pain is so intense that you're not going to sleep this entire time you're under ice. It's like a non-stop session of being tortured. And after 30 years of feeling this way, Victor has grown to love that feeling of pain. And he's describing all this to Bruce, giving him a little taste of what he plans on putting him through. And the crazy thing about this is that Victor doesn't know Bruce is Batman. He just knows that he's possibly some sort of city worker or maybe a spy from a different corporate company trying to gather some information on what they're doing there. So in his mind, he's putting a random civilian that he doesn't even know through this brutal form of sadism. And as I think about it, the other people who are frozen in this facility, these millionaires and billionaires, they paid a ton of money to have this done. So the fact that Victor is willing to do this to just anybody, whether they paid or not, really shows how far gone he is. Not just physically and mentally, but also morally. And as Victor leaves Bruce to his suffering, to help block out the agony that he's feeling, Bruce is drumming up memories of the past. And while this is happening, we're going to quickly jump back to him and his friends in Crime Alley. And at this point, Bruce and Waylon are going at it, because Waylon just got done calling Bruce a coward, and as they're throwing fists, Bruce hasn't caught on to the idea why Waylon would call him that. So Waylon elaborates that Ozzy said when you jumped off his plane to land on the boat to go fight Black Mask, there was no other way to get off that boat. You had planned to blow yourself up with it. Your last act as Batman was a suicide mission. Now in this next page, we see a lot of panels going on. It's like a culmination of different events. What's happening currently, what's happening in the recent past, as well as back to what happened at the zoo when they were all just kids. As the tank that Bruce is currently in is filling up with that freeze liquid, we see him start to maneuver around his cast. And with the flick of a wrist, it opens up to reveal a miniature battering crossbow. Now there's only 3 rounds in this thing. And while he's setting it up to aim, we're going to get some further information surrounding the events that took place in the zoo when they were younger. So remember back when Matches told Bruce that he owed him one and Bruce didn't really know what he was talking about? It's because the reason why Bruce's father never went into that room with the rest of the kids, Matches was left outside. Whether he tripped and fell as everyone was making their way there, we're unsure. But all we know is that Bruce's dad closed the door behind him so he can run back and rescue Matches. So I believe this is the turning point in Matches' life where that guilt drove him to a place of getting into crime, into trouble, and having no regard for his life, kind of going down a path of self-destruction. And that's why he told Bruce that he owed him, because his father sacrificed himself so that he would live. And the reason why Waylon was calling Bruce a coward is because that Bruce was doing the same thing. But eventually Waylon and Bruce stopped fighting. Waylon's starting to see that the Bruce that they knew isn't really there anymore. What it seems is that there's only Batman now. So it's not Bruce wearing the Batman mask. In reality, it's Batman wearing a Bruce mask. And while we're seeing this, we're also seeing Bruce shoot his 3 batarangs in the exact same spot in the freeze tank, which damages integrity enough for him to make an escape. In the meantime, Victor is at his computer station and he's in communication with somebody. And he's explaining to them that this bacterium that's over 100,000 years old is untraceable. And he even mentions the freak snowstorm, because apparently he's the one that created it. He's saying that there's a marker in the crystals that make up the snowflakes. and any person who's touched by these snowflakes are marked and will be made readable to whoever that Victor is talking to. And this person is saying that we're currently uploading that data, and right now it seems like we have 92% of the city's population documented, and this has something to do with their genetic profiles. I'm assuming the person on the other side of this phone call is probably the Joker and has to do with Ark M. They're probably looking at people's genetic markers to see if they're viable subjects for whatever's going on over at that facility. But that's just my guess. But this conversation is spectacularly interrupted by Batman. Now, I know Bruce didn't walk in with the bat suit under his clothes because Victor would have seen it once he stripped him down and threw him in that tank. But prior to Bruce walking into that room, he makes a statement saying that he had all of his equipment hidden in some pipe somewhere. So seeing him right now as Batman isn't surprising. And by Victor's response, he hasn't put two and two together. He doesn't know Bruce escaped, so he thinks this is just Batman coming out of nowhere to stop what he's doing. So Victor launches his attack, but Batman easily dodges it and counters with a blowtorch in Victor's face. Now you can tell that this hurts him, but since Victor loves pain so much, it's not going to slow him down for long. So during this battle, we're able to see some of Victor's special abilities, because along with his speed and his strength, he's able to climb walls. Now, he doesn't have any sort of like spider-like abilities. What it looks like he's doing is creating ice with his fingertips that allows him to freeze to different surfaces. But anyway, he uses this ability to scale up a wall to get a tactical advantage on Batman, grabs the Cape Crusader by the face and throws him into a wall. And remember, not too long ago, Batman was on a fast track to becoming a popsicle, so he's not 100%. Even before that, he still had a messed up arm, so I would say he's operating at 50% at best. But Victor is not one to play fair, so instead of continuing this mano-y-mano, he flips a switch and activates all the other ice corpses on that level, and they come flooding in a manner reminiscent of World War Z. I don't know if Victor is somehow controlling them, telling them what to do. I don't know why their first action is to try and rip apart Batman, but since they've been in the ice so long, their bodies are kind of mushy, so when Batman's fighting them off, he's smashing faces, punching off jaws. It's pretty gross, but kind of funny too. But the problem is there's so many of them. Batman is just being overwhelmed, and while it seems like he's almost about to give up, we're given one more flashback of the crew back in Crime Alley, and the guys just lit up a fire to commemorate Matches Malone, and the fire illuminates this large spray painted mural of him on one of the walls in Crime Alley. And as they're watching this in awe, Waylon is telling Bruce that we all grew up here, which means we're all survivors, so Batman needs to be one too. And then he asks Bruce, do you want to die? And you can tell Bruce is really contemplating this. I imagine we're seeing this memory because it's probably the same memory that's going through the mind of Batman right now while he's being overwhelmed by all these ice zombies. And he answers that question. No, he doesn't want to die. So he reaches down, grabs onto that testicular fortitude, battles back that horde of ice zombies, and makes his way out the building. Now, it wasn't an elegant, agile escape, but this is not an elegant, agile Batman. This guy is a behemoth. He just bursts his way through an already damaged wall and scrapes down the side of the building. But fortunately, due to his suit having those bat-like claw hooks, he's able to sink those into the edge of the building, preventing him from falling to his death. And as he takes a moment to breathe, he calls up Waylon. Even though he gets his voicemail, in that moment, he just needs to talk to his friend and give him the answer to the question that he asked. He first warns him that there's something going on. There's something bad in the snow that's falling. I'll call the others after this, and I'll fill you into what's going on once I see you again. But I just want to tell you that you were right, and I wanted to say thank you. So on the final page, we're seeing Waylon make his way back to Croc's gym, the gym that he owns, operates, and lives at. So he's coming back with some groceries and he's unlocking the door, only to be approached by some gentlemen in suits and trench coats. Now this is never a good sign. And before he can finish answering them, they douse him with a chloroformed rag, take a genetic sample from him, so they know for sure that he's a perfect specimen for what evil experiments they have in store back at Ark M. And that's where this story arc ends. Now in the next story arc, we're going to find out more about what's happening with Waylon, as well as the introduction to Absolute Bane. But this video was solely on the Absolute Zero story arc, which took place in Absolute Batman issues 7 and 8. And once the next story arc is complete, you can expect another video from me about that. Now, I hope you enjoyed listening. If you did, go ahead and take a look at my other videos that I have on my channel, or if you have any suggestions on any other series or story arcs you'd like for me to do, go ahead and throw that in the comments below. Otherwise, I thank you all for watching. I appreciate you, and I will see you next time.